Over the past several months, we put 7 of the most interesting stand mixers on the market to the test in our home kitchen to find out what's worth the money. Because with prices ranging from $350 all the way up to $1,000, shit, they better be. They each got dozens of hours of use under real-life conditions and across all of the main use cases, from making breads, cookies, cakes, meringues, whipped cream, and even grinding some pork.
Look at the pork spaghetti.
Here at Cult Flav, we review products for home cooks. We try to give an overview of both the technical details and what it's actually like to use these products as people who truly love cooking, not people who just want to get food on the table. And we are entirely community supported. We don't do ads and we don't take money or anything else in exchange for our reviews. Stand mixers are all about 3 tasks: kneading bread doughs, whipping up emulsions and foams, and paddling together batters and doughs. Some of those can be done with a much cheaper hand mixer, but they typically take a lot longer because hand mixers have so little power. 23 minutes and 30 seconds. We get a stiff peak. It's that first task though, kneading, especially for wet doughs that would be borderline impossible to do by hand, that sets stand mixers in a class of their own.
This is my window pane test.
All the other doodads and attachments you can stick on are usually underwhelming in their performance department, and you often pay heavily for them, but they can help save space in a cramped kitchen.
Stand mixer attachments don't tend to be of the highest quality. They're more space saver than actual compelling version of the product that they typically are.
In 2025, the stand mixer market is maybe the weirdest it's ever been, and yet the Bosch Universal, which has been around in some form since 1952, is still the weirdest of them. It really feels like what you'd get if you asked an engineer to give you everything a mixer is capable of without a single consideration for what the experience of actually using the mixer would feel like.
This is like all the worst parts of a stand mixer with all the worst parts of a handheld mixer.
Right out the gate, it's hard to argue that this isn't the ugliest mixer on the market today, but underneath that awful exterior, there is at least a good fundamental concept. The motor, the heaviest part of most stand mixers, needs to be on the bottom to keep the center of gravity low. Anyone who's ever kneaded a stiff dough in a KitchenAid knows that it's going to try its damnedest to off itself by walking straight off the edge of your counter.
She dancing.
Bosch works around that issue in 2 ways: keeping the center of gravity as low as possible and sticking suction cups on the bottom.
The suction cups, which can come out, as I've recently learned, because I just spent 10 minutes hunting down this one.
On the plus side, that means you don't need to add weight to the machine, and because of that, the mixer clocks in at only 9.4 pounds, about half the weight of the next lightest model. And while we know there's a very niche market of home bread makers who stand this monstrosity for its large capacity and efficient whipping, we found it worst in class by damn near every other metric.
It doesn't even reach the outside. Holy shit.
Take making cookies, for example. That's a classically easy task for 99% of stand mixers on the market that consists of creaming butter and sugar together and then working in other ingredients, all done with a standard paddle attachment. Bosch, however, doesn't include their paddles, so their recommended method consists of using the whisk attachments to cream the butter and sugar, and then switching to the dough hook to combine the rest of the ingredients. So instead of getting 1 paddle, 1 bowl, and maybe a spill cover dirty, you're now getting 2 whisks, the whisk hub, the bowl, 2 separate spill covers, the removable drive shaft, the dough hook, and the dough hook extender dirty. What, you've never heard of a dough hook extender? Well, that's probably because you've never used the worst dough hook in history, the Bosch Universal dough hook. Its unnecessary multi-part construction leaves lots of nice unfinished edges for you to cut yourself on when picking it up by the hub, something that literally happened to Bryn while we weren't filming. And it does such a bad job of scraping down the bowl, literally half its job, that they have to ship a fucking plastic extender for it with every mixer.
Why is this way?
Or you can buy the cookie paddle separately and cut the dirty list down to only twice as many items as everyone else. But then again, everyone else also includes their paddles with your initial purchase. I guess Bosch must have had to cut them to make room for that dough hook extender.
This is so pitiful at cookies.
It also has 4 speeds, though it does have a pulse function, something we've never seen on a stand mixer before, probably for the mediocre blender you can put on its weird little motor hump. We did not test its other attachments. For us, the $550 Bosch Universal is the hardest of passes.
I would not have shipped this.
Okay, here we go. From the lightest model, we go to the heaviest model we tested at over 4 times the weight, the GE Profile Smart Mixer, which is a fascinating hodgepodge of clever details and terrible decision making. Let's take a tour of this washing machine chic behemoth from the bottom to the top. The base is actually a scale. That seems like a smart thing to do. The only problem is it weighs all pressure applied to the machine anywhere, not just the bowl. It's also slow, and since they're asking you to measure directly into the bowl, that means you're very likely to overshoot your target directly into your other ingredients. Damn it. You could take the work bowl off and measure in small containers in the base, but it's still super slow and better scales are pretty cheap. After the first test, we never used the scale again.
It's the worst scale in the known universe.
Next, we have the bowl lift mechanism, a smooth, short throw design that requires less work and is easily accessible from both sides at the front instead of just at the back right like a KitchenAid. Genuinely super nice. But the bowl that actually sits on it is weirdly fussy. We've had a bowl lift KitchenAid for a decade and a half and never struggled with it like we did with this one. Fucking hell, I hate this bowl. And the bowl cover doesn't even work well. Then there's the planetary shaft where your various paddles and whisks and hooks attach with this hexagonal quick release design, so you don't need to align them or twist them on and off when you've got food in the bowl. They just slide in with a push and out with a pull. Genius. The attachment hub actually copies KitchenAid's one-to-one, so you can use KitchenAid attachments with it if that's your thing. Another excellent design decision. And now we come to the top, where every silly design decision possible was made. First, we've got the speed selector, which of course starts at app control and predictably ends at 11. Does calling the maximum motor speed 11 make it any faster than if it were called 10? Of course not. Did a cool executive in a half zip finally get hard without a pill after having that idea? I don't know, you tell me. They brag about how quiet it is on their website, but honestly, it sounds like they stole this motor from GE's jet engine division.
Sounds like there's an airplane in here. Holy fuck. It's so loud. Well, that's why you got it on 11.
We did play with the app control, but honestly couldn't find any real world use for it. The pitch for this mixer is that you just follow the recipes in the app and it'll do the work for you. That's kind of neat in theory, but in practice, it hasn't really been thought through. And you know what? Bryn's been designing apps professionally for nearly 2 decades. I'll let him rant about it. Enjoy.
I wish I had like an Andy Rooney impression for this bit.
There are several problems with GE's approach to smartification.
Stupid. Okay, problems. First, the Smart HQ app, no, I don't know why it's called that, isn't searchable in Siri by the letters GE, so good luck finding it again. And once you do, it's slow to connect to the mixer. That's because it's not connecting locally over Wi-Fi or directly over Bluetooth, it's connecting via GE's servers that you have to log into. So if this were in fact useful and someone came over to your house to bake and wanted to use it, they're either using your phone or you're sharing credentials. My professional opinion is that this whole smart home segment of the market, much like the AI features in all your apps, is just there as a way to eventually sell you an $8 a month subscription on every piece of hardware in your kitchen. In the meantime, the very first thing you see in the app is a series of rotating banner ads that you can only dismiss until they want to show you another ad inside the app for the product you already paid for. Cool. So then you click through to the auto-sense technique you want to use. Let's try creaming butter, for example. Okay, it's got some preset ingredients, but of course it has no idea what you want to make with that creamed butter, so you go to change them. Psych, you can't. GE says they're measuring the amount of torque required by the motor to determine the state the mix is in, but while that seems clever, it doesn't fucking matter. If it only works with the preset amounts, it's worthless. The only real-world applicable amounts outside of sheer happenstance are if you use the built-in King Arthur flour provided recipes, of which there are 45 at the time I'm writing this, 2 years after this device launched. Or you could use the recipe tab in the Smart HQ app, which is full of AI-generated recipes, all with exactly 1 5-star review. I bet those are real. Just kidding, those recipes don't actually work with this mixer. In software design, we call this type of product brittle. Brittle products only work when a very specific set of conditions are met and usually make the rest of the experience worse. Even the app functions that seem potentially useful, like controlling the speed remotely, end up being awkward because you have to touch the button on top of the machine if you want the speed to increase. If all it can do is slow down, that's not much more useful than just the timer function, which we should actually get to. The timer function just pauses the mixer when it finishes counting down. Simple, right? You know what people love in their timers? Repetitive button pressing. Bitches love repetitive button pressing. When you want to set the timer on the mixer, you tap the plus button to increase the time by 15 seconds or hold it to increase by a minute. But, and this is an annoying little implementation detail that any programmer will know well, there are two parts to a tap, a press and a release. If you wanted to measure a tap had been completed, you'd measure the release. Guess what GE did? They measured the press. Know what the first part of a hold is? A press. So now, if you press and hold to get to a minute, the timer will add the tap and the hold together and it'll go straight past a minute to 1 minute and 15 seconds. You'll have to tap back to get where you actually wanted it. If you want to set it in the app, it's a little easier, but you have to pre-select your speed and use a poorly implemented custom number selector with a narrow touch area to do it. The timer is the most basic of smart features, and instead of being an easy win, here it really just adds another bullet point to the list of unfortunate implementations. The mechanical improvements GE made were pretty smart, but all the smart features they added turned out to be just new ways to be dumb.
God damn, I hate this thing.
This is genuinely doing a terrible job.
Motherfucker.
This seems pretty useless. The stand mixer's so annoying, Sarah had to check on me.
At $800, the GE Profile Smart Mixer is obviously a pass. Next, we have the most iconic of stand mixers. The KitchenAid line goes all the way back to 1919 and has changed less than you might think since then. A lot of the current discourse around KitchenAids is that they just don't make them like they used to. And they're right. They're better by almost every single metric. The original started at $3,500 in today's money, and now they start at $350. They used to weigh 85 pounds, now they weigh 20. They used to be 2.5 feet tall, and now they all fit under a standard kitchen cabinet. And they used to all have solid gears that would pass on strain to the motor. Now there's a sacrificial gear that's easy to replace yourself to avoid a costly motor replacement. They're more efficient, they do more tasks, and they come in a bajillion colors. From our perspective, there are only a few problems with today's KitchenAids, and the big one is the same as it's ever been. The center of gravity is too damn high. Putting that heavy motor on top is a pretty dumb thing to do from an engineering perspective, because now whenever you try to work a stiff dough, you're begging for a wobble. And wobble they do, despite that big weighted base that makes them so annoying to carry around. Look at her go! ATK finally noticed that KitchenAid has weird restrictions on how long and how high you run your motor when kneading doughs. And if this isn't the whole reason, I'd be shocked. Maybe dough temperature, but I think it's probably just the walking. In 2025, the KitchenAid line is a bit of a Goldilocks situation. Let's start with our baby bear. The KitchenAid Classic line is the entry-level tilt head model from KitchenAid. It has by far the weakest motor of any unit we tested, and the basic attachments feel like toys compared to everything else.
Little guy's trying so hard. It's like a bunch of gerbils are stuck inside it.
It's less efficient than the others at every task we tried and struggled to pull together even a low-density, high-fat peanut butter cookie dough.
Listen, this is one of the easier tasks for a stand mixer. It's so funny.
2 of KitchenAid's 5 reasons to pick a tilt head mixer are just about aesthetics, and I think that's pretty accurate. If all you want out of your KitchenAid is for your kitchen to look like a 1950s garage, this may be for you. But it's just not a very good mixer, so at $350, it's a pass for us. And then we've got Papa Bear, the KitchenAid Commercial 8-quart, and frankly, he's a bit of a show-off. He really needs you to know how heavy-duty he is with his extra-long orange cable and his big macho cage and his oversized bowl that's frankly so big that we pretty much immediately swapped it out for a 6-quart bowl. But at least he's quiet. And the stainless steel attachments are very nice.
Very dense. Super, super dense.
However, for $1,000, it's a pass. Lastly, we have our Mama Bear, the recently replaced Professional 600 that my family got for us for our wedding 14 years ago as of last week. Aww. I know. She's actually just as strong as Papa Bear, if a little bit louder. She's also got the exact same frame, which means she can fit the same oversized bowl and the same nice stainless steel attachments. But 6 quarts really is just right for this form factor with a great balance of capacity and convenience. And while its MSRP of about $500 is right in the middle of the market, refurbished versions of the Pro 600 and its replacement, the KSM 60, are available from KitchenAid for just over $200.
It just has so much more torque than the tilt head. It's not even close.
Smash. Oh, and if you're into stand mixers for the attachments, KitchenAid still has the widest variety. And now we come to the fun stuff. Ooni's new spiral mixer, the Halo Pro, outpaced every other mixer on the ever-important kneading tasks. For those unfamiliar, a spiral mixer's bowl spins while the dough hook twirls along one edge, and the breaker bar in the middle helps center the dough and keep it in range for the dough hook.
This is hypnotizing.
Most spiral mixers are decidedly industrial and really only do one task. Ooni has built a version for home cooks that they say can do all the same things as a typical stand mixer. And frankly, there's a lot to like. Look at that clean bowl. Aesthetically, it's a little sterile, somewhere between fellow and medical equipment, but it's not awful. The controls are excellent, easily the best of any we tested. The single clickable dial lets you select your speed by percentage or set it to a specific number of RPMs and tap to start and stop at the speed you already set. What? And with a single tap, it switches to controlling the timer. No repetitive tapping here, just spin it to where you want it and press down to start. The tilt head is spring-loaded so it won't fall on you really aggressively. Okay. And in a move we rarely see, has two lights to illuminate the work bowl. That's fun. There's a separate fan to keep the motor cool under prolonged load, and that motor just happens to be in the back of the base to keep the mixer stable. The bowl, which doesn't have a handle because it needs to spin, is very large. I hold it like a baby. The lid design is fantastic, if a bit floppy. Man, I really wish there was a magnet here to like hold this up. It mounts to the underside of the tilt head itself rather than to the bowl, and when it's open, you have access to full half of the mixing bowl for adding ingredients, or get this, scraping down the bowl while it's running. This is nice. Those are all lovely details, but when it comes to performance, it is absolutely incredible. It cut kneading times by up to half, and being able to scrape down the bowl while it's running made creaming ingredients faster too. I think we can move on to the next step, which is like record time, because this usually takes 10 minutes with the KitchenAid because you have to stop and start and stop and start. And this I can just kind of keep going, which is pretty great. But there is one task where it really struggles, whipping. And here to tell you all about gear ratios is the guy who took one mechanical engineering course in college.
Thanks, girl who encouraged me to bail on an engineering major because I was talking too much about trains. The Ooni's whipping problem all comes down to this box right here. A lot's been said about torque since ATK's stand mixer review came out a while back, but they didn't really talk about what matters. Gears. Torque, the force of a rotation, and rotation speed are essentially competing forces. You can have high torque for tough jobs like kneading, or you can have really high speeds for tasks like whipping. But you can't often have both without sky-high costs. The super basic version is that the sequence of gears that come off that motor determine how much of the torque from the motor reaches the bowl or gets converted to speed. If you have a small gear driving a large gear, you get more speed. If you flip them, you get more torque. And the ratio is determined by the number of teeth on each gear. Since spiral mixers don't need to spin as fast as a stand mixer, Ooni appears to have gone with a high torque motor and opted to add on an external gearbox to increase the rotation rate of the whisk for the only high-speed task this mixer really needs to do. And that's both good news and bad news. The bad news is they didn't do a great job baselining this gearbox. With the current design, the Ooni Halo Pro is the slowest stand mixer we tested at whipping, taking 4 times longer than the second slowest at tasks like whipping cream and making meringue for pavlovas.
26 minutes.
Even hand mixers were faster, and they've got far less power. The good news, on the other hand, is that because they kept this gearbox separate, they should be able to fix the problem easily. Now, I haven't taken this gearbox apart because repair parts just aren't available yet. But I did manually calculate the gear ratio inside it, roughly 3:1, and by my math, a new gearbox with a 6:1 gear ratio and a second whisk on the opposite side of the bowl should take the Ooni Halo Pro from dead last to exactly on par with the single best mixer we tested in terms of whipping performance. It might not be quite as efficient without modifications to the bowl shape, but should be pretty damn close.
As Bryn mentioned, we don't know what the repair supply chain is going to look like just yet since it's so new. For now though, Ooni's built a fantastically thoughtful, high-performance stand mixer with one glaring but fixable flaw. Hopefully they resolve that sooner rather than later. At $800, this is an optimistic smash. If that whisk were fixed, this would be our top pick by a mile. It doesn't have a lot of personality, but damn it if it's not well thought out. But until Ooni whips it into gear, as it were. Pause for laugh. Our favorite stand mixer today is the Ankarsrum Assistent Original, a mixer Electrolux developed in the 1940s and launched in the US all the way back in the 90s, but just didn't meaningfully take off until a few years ago. A lot has been said about it recently, but there are a few specific reasons we love it. But as with all cookware, they've got trade-offs. First, it's a dead simple machine. Inside the base is just a motor, a belt, and a very high torque gear assembly known as a worm gear. That makes it one of the most easily repairable appliances we've ever seen. The trade-off is that the complexity gets moved to the outside, which is why the machine has more accessories than anything else we tested. You don't get a whisk, you get a 4-piece whisk assembly that mounts onto a bowl with a separate drive shaft. It's a lot to store, but luckily those parts perform really well and almost all of them are dishwasher safe. It's just those 2 beaters do double duty, so it's like insane. That's insane. Second, it has a really clever passive kneading system that helps keep dough temperature low and prevent overworking.
78.8. That's a pretty good range for yeast development.
It makes use of a rubber scraper and this little gadget that Ankarsrum calls the dough roller. That white butt plug.
Interesting. The white butt plug.
The downside is there's a pretty steep learning curve compared to other mixers. You definitely have to adapt your order of operations to how the Ankarsrum works, and people get really impatient. The Ankarsrum wants you to do wet first, so we're gonna do wet first. It only took us a couple of times to feel comfy with it, but it's going to feel weird and slow at first, and you're going to want to stay involved until you get the feel for it. It just needs a little nudge every once in a while.
It's nice that it's not going to walk off the counter.
We attribute that slow feeling to its unique gluten development curve. Because we actually got more gluten development within the same time frame, it just had a slow start. The other problem is that recipes aren't often written for in Ankarsrum. That's a huge disadvantage compared to KitchenAid and its ilk. The upside though is that you have a wide open bowl to work with. We could easily add and remove ingredients with zero spillage or straight up reach our hands in to grab our dough with no fear. It really does make for a lovely experience.
I can just reach in and grab it if I want to. Like, it's not going to do anything to me.
Third, the whisk mechanism is blazing fast. It's similar to the Bosch's design, but with included beaters, fewer parts, and all of it is dishwasher friendly. We had meringues twice as quick as the KitchenAids and 10 times faster than the Ooni's current gearbox. That means there's less room for error, but as long as you pay attention, you're done in no time. Like 2 minutes, 30 seconds to stiff peaks from the beginning too. Jesus Christ. As for controls, it has some of the simplest. Just 2 dials on its ugly silver faceplate, one for turning it on, off, or setting a turn-off timer up to 12 minutes, the other to control your power level, both of which leave you to guess what you're aligning to. I do wish there was like some sort of marker here to indicate where you're starting your timer.
Totally agree.
Because it is a little bit like,
You're guessing.
you're kind of guessing at where 10 is. We'd love it if they would just pick 1 silver material instead of 3, because the fit and finish on the front is definitely one of its weakest points.
Guy Fieri looking device.
It's also got a pretty big range of accessories that are a little nicer than KitchenAid's at a very steep markup. It even has a blender hub like the Bosch Universal. At $750, the Ankarsrum Assistent Original is a smash and our top pick. It's very gentle. Thanks for watching. As always, we've got links to all of these and their scores in the description. If you've already used some of these and you've got opinions, go add your review over at cultflave.com. It only takes a few seconds and it helps other home cooks make informed decisions. And if you've got questions, you can ask them in the community over there too. Lastly, if you get value out of these reviews and want more, we'd really appreciate your support. It starts at only $20 a year and just helps us review more products for home cooks. It really makes a lovely experience. It really makes for, yeah. It really makes for a lovely experience. Fuck. It really does make for a lovely experience.
God damn it.
It really makes for a lovely experience.
I love the experience.
Yeah.